Cacti on Radio. I'm Ken, and welcome to our in-between season robot solo episode. What I'm doing today is kind of unique. I'm actually playing the robot against the robot, and I'm doing this in preparation for our Secondary Madness series, which will be coming in just a few weeks, and we're going to see how well it works. I am using the latest rule edition that Ed gave us, in terms of using all the new Clone Wars factions and a couple little tweaks that he's been making to the rule set. The fleets that I'm using today are kind of unique in that I was watching Discord and both fleets come from, I think it's May of last year, where a discussion was being had about General Grievous using tons of Vulture squadrons. There's 16 in this fleet. And I'm kind of interested to see how that winds up turning out. So today's fleets, unbeknownst to them, until now, are brought to you by both Analog Line and Ghost in the Machine. So if you're really interested, you go back to our Discord, find the original chat. But I've got both of the fleets. We're going to get to them right now, and then to the action. Once we're done, we'll have a little discussion on how I think things could have turned out one way or the other, or just what my thoughts are on these fleets. Coming in at 396 points, this is a Gar fleet led by Luminara Unduli. She is on a Venator 2 class Star Destroyer with expert shield tech, the Spat, thermal shields, external racks, and the Tranquility title. There's a second Venator 2, equipped pretty much the same, expert shield tech, Spat, thermal shields, external racks, but with the Resolute title. Final combat ship is a Consular Armed Cruiser, Clone Navigation Officer, the Radiant 7 title, and munitions resupply. For squadrons, we have Anakin Skywalker, Ahsoka Tano, and the pair of Axe and Kickback. Coming in at 398 points, we have a Separatist fleet led by General Grievous. Grievous is on a Munificent class Star Frigate with Wat Tambor, projection experts, reactive gunnery, DBY 827 heavy turbo lasers, and the Sa Nalior title. Second combat ship is a Providence class carrier with TI-99, thermal shields, rapid launch bays, expanded launchers, heavy ion emplacements, the DBY 827 heavy turbo lasers, and the Invisible Hand title. There's also a complement of 16 Vulture droid fighter squadrons. Garfleet wins the bid and decides to go first. Selection of objectives is as follows: surprise attack, fighter ambush, and infested fields. Decision was made to go with surprise attack. When looking at the other objectives, fighter ambush gives kind of a unique advantage to the 16 Vultures, doing extra victory tokens and giving the Separatists an opportunity to score extra points. Infested fields could be a bonus, but it could also be a negative, just giving all the more ways to hold down the Gar squadrons. So without being able to really move Ahsoka, Axe, and Kickback, decided to go with surprise attack. Okay, here's our overall view of the map. As you can see, we have a couple asteroid fields, well actually the debris fields hanging out in the far end where none of the ships wound up deploying. All this was set up by the robot. This is how the asteroids and debris and obstacles all filled out. Let's take a look at deployment of the ships themselves. Luminara is set up there under surprise attack on the station. You can see she's placed just at the back end here. The other Venator 2 is sitting there about range 3 away from their edge with the support CR-70 in the back. Squadrons are flanking Luminara's Venator just to protect her from all those Vultures that are on the opposite side of the table. All Republic ships are moving at speed 2. On the Separatist side, we have 4 Vulture squadrons in the rapid launch bays on the Invisible Hand. Grievous on the Munificent is moving at speed 2. Providence, on the other hand, is moving at speed 3. Turn 1, start of the ship phase. We're going to show the first raid token. It's going to be a squadron command. So all of the Republic ships have a squadron raid to start off with. Activation here, pretty simple. Starting out with the C-70, gets a nav, sends out some munitions resupply tokens to the Venators for spats. Continues moving at speed 2, staying within relatively close range to the Venator. Grievous, on the other hand, is going to bank up a concentrate fire token, and he's going to move forward at speed 2, again positioning himself in a location to be able to start striking on Luminaras. Luminara's Venator is the next ship to activate. Squadron command is shown. Because of the raid token, we'll take it as a token and then just move a little bit to put ourselves in position to get that ignition token out and do a spat attack on turn 2. Providence, being completely out of range of everything, takes a concentrate fire token and moves in at speed 3, going right to attack Luminara's Venator. Final ship is the second Venator 2, and it shows concentrate fire dial. It's going to use that to wipe out the squadron raid token, and then move ahead at speed 2. Putting out its ignition token out the front arc. It's the only way it's going to be able to shoot at anything in the next round. Squadrons are a lot of positioning. Both axe and kickback move forward. A bunch of the Vultures try to get into a spot where the Venators will overlap them, staying out of range of axe and kickback. This is done intentionally because this squadron ball is going to be more than capable of holding all these Vultures in one spot, not making any attacks on ships. Anakin and Ahsoka move forward. Now we have the rest of the Vultures in play. They're going to all move forward, getting in either to a position to hold down some of the Republic squadrons or go after the Venators. Now that everything's set up for turn 2, let's see where the firing really begins. A navigate is revealed on the raid token dial, passed on to all the Republic ships. Activating Luminara's Venator first. Using the saved squadron token, eliminating that raid, and then able to leverage this full squadron dial to activate squadrons. Axe, kickback, Ahsoka, all of them doing some levels of damage to a variety of Vulture squadrons. None of them getting destroyed. Final shot though, Anakin comes in, makes his shot, and takes out one Vulture, leaving 2 of them at some levels of damage. The ignition shot is rolled. Ignition shot does 6 total damage, is braced, and move on to the second shot, firing out into the front, doing some damage, some salvo, all of this landing on shields. In order to avoid crashing into both Venators, Luminara is taking a turn directly into Grievous's flagship. The ignition token is put out the side. This is going to be more or less completely unavoidable by the Munificent. General Grievous is the next ship to activate, takes a concentrate fire dial, and begins an assault onto Luminara's Venator. First shot comes out the front, and from the side. Again, we're all at predominantly shield damage here. Luminara does fire back with a salvo, everything being redirected towards the rear of Grievous's flagship. Grievous moves his ship into a bunch of squadrons, displacing many of the Vultures, but not any that are right on to the Venator. Second Venator begins. We've got a navigate dial. It makes its ignition shot into the side of Grievous's ship, again setting up for a later shot. All the dice wind up getting rolled, doing 4 damage with a crit, a couple accuracies, blocking the brace and the salvo. This winds up amounting to a structural damage, doing 3 total damage to Grievous's flagship. Unfortunately, due to positioning, Venator winds up ramming into Luminara's Venator, each taking some internal damage. Our invisible hand is being used here, as fighters are launched and make attacks against the Venator with Luminara. A lot of blanks, redirects with expert shield techs wind up taking away the single hits, and some salvo comes back as well. Providence makes a side shot into the side of Tranquility. Not a lot of damage between Brace and Tranquility, it's all handled by shields. The only other shot that Providence can make is out the front, flacking Anakin, doing a hit. Axe, however, is able to leverage his tokens and take that away. Unfortunately, in movement, Providence does wind up ramming the Munificent. Moving on to the C-70, showing a navigate dial, uses it to wipe out all of the raid tokens. At the same time, pushing with Clone Navigation Officer navigate token over to Luminara's Venator. Little speed to move, and stays right next to the secondary Venator. Squadron phase, bunch of things wind up happening. Vultures are firing up against the front of Luminara's ship, primarily keeping everything at 0 damage, or we're leveraging braces and Luminara's special ability to keep this ship going. Vultures are still sitting there, and we move on. At the end of the turn, both of the spats are refreshed along with the Clone Navigation Officer. Turn 3, final raid dial for surprise attack, another squadron. So first activation will be Luminara's Venator once again, showing squadron dial. We're going to take out all of the tokens with that. First shot is that ignition shot going out the side into the side of Grievous. Tons of damage blocking the brace, goes through, and Grievous's ship is just destroyed. Remaining shots are going to be flak against squadrons out the front. In this instance, tons of one-off damages, a couple zeros. End of the day, only one Vulture is destroyed. As the ship moves on, we only displaced a couple of the squadrons, in fact only 2. Those will be of an opportunity to shoot at it again later, but avoiding the bulk of what's behind it. Providence shows a navigate, takes a long-range shot at the back of Luminara's Venator. At long range, we're only rolling 2 reds. Both turn out accuracies. We spend out that confire, get another accuracy, so there's no hits whatsoever. We have another shot going against the other Venator. Accuracy against the redirect and a hit. It's taken, salvo back, doing 1 damage on the front of Providence. Now, a couple options here to move when taking a look at what the robot wants to do. What we have to do, we have to destroy one of the Venators. Luminara's is the one that is the closest to being killed, so the Providence is going to move towards it. Oddly enough, it's able to just make it in front of the Venator and not bump it. So here we are in a juicy double arc shot from that Venator, but I think the Providence can take it for 1 turn. So second Venator starts up its turn, shows a nav dial, clears out the tokens, and then starts its barrage on the Providence. First is going to be the ignition shot. Thermal shields are going to get used here, reducing the sum total capability to just 3 blue dice, winds up being 3 hits. So using salvo and redirect, Providence is able to handle that level of damage, doing 2 back against the Venator 2. Venator then makes its front shots against the Providence. Accuracies the brace, doing 4 damage. Providence has to redirect that, taking an internal shot. 2 ships ram, everything stays right where it is. Final activation for ships is the armed counselor. Shows a nav and begins firing, again at the Providence. Basically doing 2 damage to it. The counselor also has a side shot, just manages to get in there, still at close range. Providence opts to use thermal shields here, removing a black die, resulting in only 1 hit. Given the speed of the C-70, it's able to maneuver its way to the opposite side of the Providence, not landing or displacing any squadrons. Now, speaking of squadrons, we have a bunch of fire going on from the Republic squadrons. Anakin burns a token, start moving around, kickbacks shooting a few things. Vultures are starting to attack Luminara's Venator, but for the most part, Anakin and Kickback are able to keep most of the Vulture squadrons, forcing them to attack the squadrons as opposed to the ship. This is going to be critical in keeping the Ven 2 alive. Ahsoka winds up knocking out one of the Vultures. Axe kills a Vulture. Kickback kills a Vulture. There is some level of counter going on here because of TI-99. And after the entire barrage, with several Vultures attacking him, Kickback is finally destroyed. Anakin has been reduced to 3 health. He's most likely going to be the next one to go down. And then we move on to round 4. Round 4. Robot opts to do something a little strange here and selects the C-70 to move as opposed to the Venator with the ignition shot. Odds are the Venator is going to kill the Providence on its next activation, but Robot chose to go with the armed cruiser. So we show a nav dial, fire into the side of the Providence that still has shields, and then flacking out the front at a couple Vultures, destroying one of them. Providence chose nav for its dial. It's going to use it as a dial and starts making shots. First shot is going to be its side to the rear of Luminara's ship. This is at close range. Wind up blocking the salvo, doing 2 damage to it. Tranquility title comes into play, pulling those shields from the front, keeping the Sakai alive. Second shot, on the other hand, going to wind up accuracying the contain because it's 2 crits in here. Expert shield text being used with the redirect, reducing that to 1 total damage. Crit is blinded gunners. Now Providence is able to move up right alongside the Venator, skillfully keeping itself in only the front arc of the one Venator and the side arc of Luminara's Venator. Luminara is the next one to activate. Shows a squadron. We start activating all the Republic squadrons, taking out one of the Vulture squadrons and firing side to side into the Providence, which does destroy it, but not before it can salvo back. Salvo dice winds up being an accuracy, a hit, and a hit crit. Accuracying the contain braces that down to 2 with the critical. Critical is a thruster fissure. Luminara moves off. The only thing that really is left here that matters is going to be the Vultures firing against it. In this case, both of them roll double reds. 2 more hits taken on to the Venator between the brace, the redirect with expert shield text. Going through the rest of the turn, Anakin and Ahsoka will wind up being destroyed. No extra Vultures are going to be taken out. And that will conclude the game. We'll go to a wrap-up. Alright, so I'm back. That episode did not exactly go as I was expecting it to. So complete tabling on the side of the Separatist faction. Just 2 ships, and that's where you sit, along with the fact that the Republic forces had the 2 Spats and the Venators, and that is just one of the meanest, toughest squadron balls with Ahsoka, Anakin, Axe, and Kickback. And it's relatively inexpensive too, only at about 75 points. Key takeaway from this episode: 16 Vultures are great, but when they're held down by 4 Republic squadrons, they can't do so much. Really, that set, Anakin, Ahsoka, Axe, Kickback, for the points, tremendously good, especially against generics. And even with the TI-99 counter, they did take out almost all of the Republic squadrons, but they were focused on that as opposed to killing Luminara's Venator. We're only 3 points away, 3 whole points away from taking that out. So that could have potentially adjusted the score a little bit. So if things had changed a smidge, let's say the Providence got away and Luminara was killed, it'd be a much closer game. It would have been 207 points to 180, which would have actually then had a Separatist victory. Thing is I think with the extra activation, you have the Venator with both of them with the Spats. Really hard to kind of get through that, and the Providence did take quite a beating in the 2 rounds with the Spats and the extra shots. Venator 2 right out that front arc, and then a Spat out the side. Anytime you can double arc a ship, that's a pretty decent hit. So I did play this scenario again off camera and tried a couple different changes with the robot setup in terms of, was it attacking, carrier, movement profiles. And it kind of wound up being the same. So the squadrons, they just wound up battling. Again, it's a tough squadron. In some cases, I could take out 1 Venator, but in almost every single instance, because I played a game, and I know Ed, who created the robot, played a game with the same fleets as well. Same thing. You're looking at either tabling or near tabling, and just not enough against this Republic fleet. I think a couple key points here. In terms of the fleet setup, we need a lot of defensive stuff put on the Munificent. And if you're keeping it out of the fight, staying further away, yeah, maybe Wat Tambor or projection experts can do a little bit. But if you gun for that Munificent, it's just not able to really sustain enough firepower to stay in the game long enough. The other thing is the battle wound up being in the center of the board. Too far away to run squadrons off and regain some defense tokens. That would have been useful as well. Maybe add some flight controllers or another way to deal with squadrons. Give them some extra dice to really hit the Republic squadrons. And they're all aces, really hard. Luminara was, I think, key to keeping the Venator alive. With the constant move between the expert shield techs and then either using the brace to knock it down to 1 damage or the redirect to suck up a damage, you pretty much were in a consistent position of taking 1 hit or none and regaining your tokens. So Luminara very powerful in this particular instance. To the robot itself, this was a fascinating exercise in trying to get the robot to play against itself. There's 1 or 2 tweaks I may wind up making in terms of how I approach the robots, but all in all, I think it's going to make it really fun and exciting to see how the tournament section of the 8 fleets that are going to be coming soon are going to play up against each other. The good news is it's very repeatable, so in terms of does the robot just get lucky this time or the next, I don't think so. With the robot just kind of being theoretically the same skill level regardless of player size, or whether it's player 1 or player 2, I should say. The good news is it should work out fine, and you'll see the same thing where the fleets really are the key component here. All right, again, this is a quick episode. This is the one in between the seasons. Stay tuned for Madness, which is coming next week. We're excited to show you that. I know John's excited to talk to you more about that as well. So stay tuned. This is our favorite part of the year, flying your fleets on our table just to see what happens. And sometimes some good ideas come out of it. So we're looking forward to bringing you all 16 fleets combating up against each other. So stay tuned. Hopefully you guys will enjoy that run as well. A lot of good fleets, and unfortunately, only one does get to win Armada's tournament. So until then, I'm Ken, and this is Ion Radio.